All right. What's going on, my friends? We are live with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jason Swenk. Super excited to have you here, brother. And I've known about you for years, and so I've been looking forward to this conversation. I appreciate the flexibility. And congrats on the recent move out here to the Mile High City. I'm sure you're loving it already. As a way to get started, please brag about yourself a little bit. Just dive into some of your major wins over the years. And I know it always sucks bragging about yourself, but you got so many accomplishments to share, man.
Oh yeah. That's the one thing I hate doing. Probably the worst at I just like your intro. Like I was jamming, with the music. So I appreciate you having me on. So yeah, I guess we'll start off. I'm an accidental agency owner. I created an agency back in 1999 when Al Gore invented the internet for all of us. Thank you, Al. And it grew, to over 8 figures in 12 years, and we were lucky enough to sell it. And then after that, I just kind of wandered around aimlessly, depressed, kind of looking for the next thing. And I was just lucky enough that my old digital agency competitors started asking me, what I did to get work with clients like LegalZoom and Hitachi, and just love doing it, and kind of turn that into a business, helping agency owners and being a resource I wish I had. And then that's also turned into owning an agency again with a number of select few amazing people, where in the past 11 months, we've grown the agency to over 6 million in EBITDA, which is pretty exciting. So
that's incredible. So what made you decide to go back into agency life again?
Well, I mean, I never really kind of left, like when I was, advising all these people all over the world in agencies. So I was in it. And then just, one of the people that, followed the podcast and followed the content was like, hey, I want to do this crazy idea, this type of agency. And I was like, all right, let's try it out. And it's, it's grown fairly quick. So it's been awesome.
Clearly, that's amazing. So what's the new model for that?
Well, it's growth through acquisition. So in the past 11 months, we've bought 8 agencies.
Wow.
And the whole model is to, grow it, be better together, and then, sell it or go public in the next couple of years. And we're well on our way for that. So I was like, I wish I knew what I knew back in the day. We're bigger now than we were. It took us 12 years, which is pretty funny.
Yeah. And you hear that a lot too. Like if you lost absolutely everything and had to start totally from scratch, you could probably, you're doing it again right now. So exactly. That's incredible. What led you in your life up to 1999 to being like, you know what, I'm going to start an agency?
Well, it was all by accident. So one of my friends looked like Justin Timberlake from NSYNC. You might be too young to remember NSYNC. So I created a website.
I'm a 90s baby. I was around for that.
All right. Well, I was born in the 70s. I created a fake band, fake website called In Shit, and it got really popular. And it was back on the GeoCity domains that we had back in the day when we used to design in tables. And it got popular. And then people asked me to design websites for them for like $500 and that kind of stuff. So that's how I got started, like doing $500 websites, and then eventually, doing $1 million engagements.
So website. And even then, I mean, there's so many areas of being in an agency where people even now are like, oh, that's a fad, that's going to pass. In 1999, people were like, websites were a fad, right? This thing isn't going to be around, this thing, the internet. Why would we need a website? How did you overcome those hurdles so early on successfully?
Well, I didn't convince anybody to do anything. I just went after the people that were interested in it. The idiots that thought the internet was the fad, I'd be like, all right, keep thinking that.
Yeah.
So, we just went after the people that wanted a bigger reach, and to be kind of the innovators rather than the laggers.
Yeah. And now digital agencies, there's so many digital agencies out there. I mean, digital agencies is the thing. You were so early to the game. Do you think it's, I mean, as we're looking, especially because COVID has caused so much disruption, and as we're looking at new industries and new markets and everything, is it better to be early in the way that you were? Like, was there a benefit to that, or is it better to just be the best no matter where it is, or you're starting way late down the road?
Well, most of the time, the first one through the wall is the most bloodiest, right? So, but I think it's better to do it not first, but maybe better, right? So think about like Steve Jobs is a perfect example. He didn't invent the MP3 player. He saw the MP3 player and he made it better by doing, the iPod. Same thing with the phone. He didn't invent the smart device. He just made it better. And so I think it's always better to be better, but if you can do first and better together, it's the utopia that you want, right?
Yeah, definitely. Gotta, I guess it just depends on the scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So with building your agency and being in, I mean, you've seen so many different models for marketing, and a lot of the, this is B2B. A lot of people listening to this are in very complex, high dollar, long sales cycles. If you were starting digital from scratch right now, how would you build a roadmap for that? Step 1 to A through Z.
Well, I mean, if you're selling high ticket items, regardless if you're agency or not, it's all about, you got to think about, you're not selling, right? Or you're almost kind of, you got to think about how can you make it an easier decision for them, and how can you position yourself in a different light. So a lot of people go into it as selling, going, hey, I'm this expert and I can sell you this, right? Like, you need to buy this. But they're positioning themselves in a way where you're kind of that creepy dude that comes up to someone at a conference and you're like, hey, Connor, my name is Jason. I'm the best agency advisor in the world, and just brag about yourself, right? You're like, you're an idiot. Like, get away from me. Versus if I said, hey, Connor, why'd you come to the conference? How can I actually help you out? Like, oh, you do this, and oh, you're a podcaster. And so what's your biggest challenge? And I actually position myself, I love what Donald Miller does, right? He does it so well. He breaks it down into stories. And he talks about position yourself as that trusted advisor. You're Alfred, right, to Batman, rather than making yourself Batman, which makes everyone else or the people you're selling Robin. And since it's coming up in Halloween, I don't know too many people dressing up as like Robin, right? Like, really, like, everybody dresses up as Batman.
Or Alfred. I've seen no Alfreds out there in the last few years.
Yeah. And so you have to position yourself as Alfred and say, what's the biggest challenge? What do you want? And actually guide them through like a plan in order to actually get there. So that's what I would do over again. It's all about really repositioning yourself. And then once you have yourself positioned in the right way, it's about offering the right offer at the right time. So too many people go up to someone and say, buy my stuff, which is basically going up to, like, if I went up to my wife and said, like, will you marry me? She'd be like, no, like, I don't know you. If she said yes, I'd probably be running the other way, right? Like, you have to build trust. And so you have to think about what's my offer ladder? What can I actually position to sell you to make it an easy decision, less risky? Could it be like a blueprint? Like, could we sit down? Like, a lot of times salespeople will sit down with people and they'll give everything to them for free, like all this strategy, but then you'll charge on execution, which I always kind of laugh at. I'm like, why don't you sell the strategy, a high level strategy that leads into a higher or a more detailed strategy that leads into a retainer, and you stagger it and you build, value with them over time.
And even in our experience, some of that's tough to do. And I've talked to clients about this as well, is getting that, like, and I know this has been a big, something you've talked about quite a bit is preaching, is that, like, foot in the door, like, what's your foot in the door offer? Mm-hmm. And, how do you, because so many people want value up front, right, before they buy anything, especially now. How do you determine what to price at, how to price it, and really how to position it? Stuff I'm doing for free right now, I probably should be charging for, but it's hard to like, even if it's $50, it's like, it's hard to collect money sometimes like that.
Well, you have to be talking to the right prospect, right? First. And then you have to position it the right way where they actually understand it. So if you just say, and you said, hey, my name is Connor, Jason, I want to sell you an audit. Well, you're selling an audit, but you're not selling what am I going to get with the audit. So when we used to do a lot of web design, back in the day, our foot in the door was we would figure out all the companies that were spending over $10,000 a month in AdWords. And we'd say, I'd call you up and say, hey, Connor, I noticed that you're spending over $10,000 a month in AdWords. And when people are spending that amount, we see a lot of wasteful spending. And we want to actually make sure you're not wasting any spending and to make sure that your dollar is going as far as you could possibly can. And we charge $2,500 for that. And then what we'd also say, like other ways that you can do it is say, like if you ask the right questions. So if you figure out what they want and their biggest challenge. So let's say their biggest challenge was around lead generation. So I'd be like, okay, cool. What we're going to do, what I suggest us doing, right? So remember that trusted advisor is calling that hero to action. What we recommend us doing to build, that pipeline, to build that lead generation for us is let's do a blueprint where we're going to do a lead generation blueprint for us. And in this blueprint, we're going to map a high-level plan that you're going to see what you can do for the blueprint. Now, there's 3 possible outcomes. The first outcome, you'll love the plan and you'll go execute it yourself.
And you're literally saying this to your prospects.
Word
really?
For word. Yep. Because they're thinking, well, what's the possible outcomes? So I want to address their objections already. And then I'll say the second outcome is you'll love the plan, you'll want my help, which is the most common. Third, you'll hate the plan. I actually give you your money back, so there's nothing for you to lose. So I'm doing this risk reversal. Now, a lot of people thinking or right now is going, well, how many people will cheat the system? Well, you're already giving away for free anyway. But over the period of 2 years, or not 2 years, over 20 years, there's only been 2 people to ask refunds. The one was Russians that had a Russian translator. Nothing against Russians other than Putin. But the one had, right? We won't get political.
We are on Facebook right now, Jason.
Yeah. What's up, Putin? You're right.
He's listening.
Yeah. They were nothing against Russians other than Putin, but they had Russian translators on because they didn't speak English, and obviously I don't speak Russian. So I don't know what the heck this translator was saying. They asked for a refund. I was like, okay, I didn't understand you anyway, and it was the worst thing ever. And then the other one was just trying to scam the system. I was like, but that's something I would probably give away anyway. But 20 years, 2.
So one thing you touched on was positioning, which is a lot of agencies being in that world are like, you have to niche yourself, or you have to do this, or you have to do this. If we're thinking, B2B, whether it's SaaS or IT or telecom or medical sales, what are people doing wrong when it comes to their positioning for the most part?
Well, there a couple things. They're talking about themselves rather than who they actually serve. And another one is they're not getting specific enough. Like if I were just saying, I help business owners, that's too broad. And then when I said, I'll help B2B companies, that's still too broad. And then I was like, well, what about agency owners? And that was still too broad. And then I was like, digital agency owners, right? And then I'm like, okay, now I understand, because the reason that you have to do this is you have to understand them better than they understand themselves, right? And I want to scare away the people that are not that actually attracts them to me even more. That's really kind of the secret. I mean, if there's a secret out there, but here's the other secret. No one can ever tell you which is I always love seeing the stupid Facebook ads, like how to pick the perfect niche for your industry,
right?
Because I'm the expert. And I just start laughing. I'm like, literally, because no one can tell you that. You have to figure that out. I got to a point where I wanted to close down my agency one day. And my wife was like, well, just go get a job, which is ultimate failure. And I remember interviewing with a company, and they were like, what do you want to do every day, and what don't you never want to do ever again? And from answering those questions, and like I did this exercise where I drew a circle on a sheet of paper, and like everything outside the circle was the stuff I don't ever want to do ever again. Everything inside the circle, and I did that first outside. And then everything on the inside, I was like, that's everything I want to do. And it gave me that clarity. And part of that was what type of clients, what niche do we want to go after?
Just getting it down on paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So is it better to like niche to an industry, or just when you say specific, be specific? Because this is, you find this with agencies too. We're a do it all, be it all, agency. We service everybody with a pulse. And so is it better to focus in on, we're specialists in Facebook ads, for example, even though we can do your website and all this, or saying we're an agency for whatever, name industry?
There's a couple of things you can do, like a horizontal, which is like, how I look at it as is like the industry, or a vertical would be like an industry, and then horizontal, it could be on a specialization. And then when they crosshair, that would be like the best of both worlds. It really depends. Like I always tell people, even like, obviously I deal with all agencies, but you got to be really careful at, like, let's say there's an agency listening and you just say, I'm just going to do it on a service. Right. Well, those types of platforms like Facebook and Google, they're actually starting to go more direct. And if you look at kind of the history of how things have actually trended, like let's go back to the automotive industry. Okay. So the car manufacturers, they never went direct before. They always went through car dealers. That's why car dealers were invented, in the 1800s or 1900s, whenever this was, right? I can't remember when we came out with horses, right? Or got rid of horses.
Came out with horses years ago, probably.
There you go.
Millions of years ago.
And so, but now, the car manufacturers are starting to go direct, like Tesla, getting rid of a lot of their dealers. So if you look at the industry with Facebook, they're starting to go direct, right? Agencies, they're just, the name is a middleman.
Right.
So you got to be really careful. So I actually recommend kind of picking a vertical first. Now, a lot of times people look at their bigger competitors and they go, well, they're serving everybody. But you're looking at them now. So then you'd be like, oh, they're serving 8 industries. Well, if you started to go back in their origin story and how they started, they may have started out smaller. Think about Facebook. We're talking about Facebook. We're live on Facebook and all these other great platforms, right? They didn't start out going after everybody. Harvard students, Ivy League students, colleges, ex-boyfriend and girlfriend stalking each other, right? So they just kind of started adding, more verticals and more audience later on.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And that's, study IBM or study Microsoft, is like they started with that one thing. So I guess if you're starting from scratch, is really hone in and focus on that thing to get to a level where you're able to like build a new funnel for, other areas of your business.
Yeah. Success leaves clues, as Tony Robbins says, right? So
100%.
Look at how the people that have already done it, how they actually got there, and then try to use that as a framework for you to build on. Don't copy it exactly, because then, you look like someone else, but use it as a framework.
Yeah. Do you feel, man, there's so much out there, and you've been in the space for so many years now, are there too many digital agencies out there?
No, I mean, I love the more and more agencies out there, the better for me, right? And the more options. It's kind of like, the Ford coming out with the Bronco, and like all the Jeep guys, and I'm a huge Jeep guy. I have 3 Jeeps, okay? And all the Jeep guys are like, oh, this is horrible. I'm like, I'm ordering a Bronco. Like,
wait, you live in Colorado now. Where's your Subaru? You're missing the Subaru.
No, I can't drive a Subaru. Come on.
Don't drive a Subaru.
No. No. So like I order a Bronco, but like, it's like more competition, the better, I look at it, right?
Yeah. It just gets confusing for the outsider. And you hear that a lot too, is, oh my God, dude, I don't even know where to go because there's so many agencies out there. Mm-hmm. Do you recommend that on the buyer perspective? Like, any tips and recommendations on how to go about sourcing the right agency?
Do the one that talks the least,
and
ask the most questions. The agencies that go in just kind of telling them how good they are, like, oh, look at my awards and look at like throwing up on you, run the other way. Like, if they're going, what do you want? What's the biggest challenge in getting there? Like, what's the impact on your business? Like, and then they define a plan. So I used to teach people how to race cars, and this is very important. Okay. So I would be like, Connor, we're going to go through this 90-degree corner at 100 miles per hour. You're going to be like, and there's a wall. And if you hit the wall, you're probably going to get really hurt. You're going to be like, no way in hell I'm going to do this. But if I can walk you through the plan so you don't die, and then I can demonstrate it to you, that's the most important. That's how you need to pick an agency. So you already told them what you want. You told them the problem. If they can explain a plan in order for you to get there and you understand it, they're probably the right choice for you.
I think that's a great point. And that goes for all businesses too. You listening to this as a seller, marketer, CEO are your team asking enough questions, or are they just going in and just talking about how great you guys are? And you're probably losing deals and not realizing it.
Yeah. I mean, everything anybody does is just ask questions and shut up. And then when it's time, present the plan that you think would be best for them. That's it. Like it's not rocket science. Like that's all you need to do.
Yeah. So shifting momentum here, I was really interested to dive in on your podcasting strategy, because I know personally what it's done for my life, career, business, sales. And I'm really encouraging, if you're a marketing department, like start a podcast for your company. So first off, what led you to doing, how long you've been podcasting now? What led you to, get that started?
6 years. We've been doing the podcast 50 weeks a year. We'll take off mostly on Thanksgiving and Christmas. That's the only weeks that we won't launch an episode. And, it's kind of by accident. I remember when I started helping agencies, I was like, well, let me interview some of my friends and old competitors just to create a resource I wish I had, right? Just a fly on the wall of two agencies just chatting about what's working. And I started interviewing people on Google Hangout. And then a friend of mine was like, well, you should turn that into a podcast. I'm like, podcast is stupid. Like, who wants to watch a podcast on the computer? And he's like, hey, dummy, take your iPhone out. You can listen to the audio while you're doing other stuff. I'm like, oh. I was like, okay. So I started by accident, like everything else. And it's been amazing, right? Like it keeps me chatting with the best in the world. It's a great prospecting tool as well. It's a great training tool for your internal team. So like if you have a team, you say, hey, you're required to listen to the podcast. Like they'll stay up to date on everything. And there's so many benefits. And like literally like every month they're like you're filling up the stadium. Well, like when you start getting, much later on, in the very beginning, no one will listen to your show. But you got to ignore it for like the first year.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
But now it's like a couple stadiums filled of people listening to me every week. Like that's crazy.
It's your list and everything. Talk about how do you use that as a prospecting strategy?
So, one way that I tell people to do is like reach out to your perfect prospect. Your first intention is to get a great interview for your audience. But what I'll do, in the podcast is I'll do kind of what the movie theater used to do when we could actually go to movies, right? So I'd be like, you remember like before the movie starts, like you have they pump in the popcorn smell. They get like, I hate popcorn smell. So like, I hate the movies.
I don't need popcorn, but damn, I love the popcorn smell.
Yeah. So most people will be like, ooh, I need to get popcorn. Or what I always fall for is like when they show the Coca-Cola with the fizz, right? Like I could taste it now. I'm like,
yeah.
Like I want to get a drink of that carbonation. So throughout the show, I'll be like, oh yeah, a mastermind member, had that problem and here's what the results were, or here's what one of my one-on-one clients did. Or at the very end of the show, I'll be like, hey, thanks so much for listening to the show. And if you want to be surrounded by amazing agency owners on a consistent basis that can help you grow and see the stuff you can't, make sure you go to digitalagencyelite.com, blah, 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 right? And then all the time, like at the very end, after we stop recording, they're like, hey, tell me more about that. And if they don't, that's fine. Like we created amazing content, but
this is your intro into the show.
My outro.
Your outro. Yeah. And you're saying this live as you're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I'll make something kind of call to action, right? So
yeah, 100%. Well, and that was something because I watched your I don't know if it was your most recent webinar. You did co-hosted a webinar I don't. Maybe that was one of your
Oh,
new
yeah,
agency
yeah,
partners.
yep. That was
Oh,
too long ago.
now it's all coming together. Is how do you take from that? Because podcasting, in my experience, can be kind of a lot of people struggle with this too. It's kind of like a loop around to getting business, and it works. But how else are you taking those podcast guests and like effectively turning those into sales besides just like an outro at the end?
Well, we'll stay in contact with them. And I probably could do a better job with the follow-up, but I don't. Right. But I make my clients do it. Be like, all right, what's the follow-up strategy? Like, maybe in the post of when someone's coming in to your podcast, like, did you ask them questions, their biggest challenges, what they want, that kind of stuff. So then you can actually reach out to them later on. If they don't ask me for like the stuff after, or, it's kind of like, all right, just hit me up whenever. But a lot of times what I find is if my audience is targeted, my podcast is targeted, I interview them, they're probably already started to listen to the show once I invited them on.
Right.
And then they get on my list. Right. And then they're like, you're everywhere. I'm like, no, I'm just everywhere for you because I'm remarketing the shit out of you. Right. So.
Right. Yeah, man. So many people just haven't caught on to this yet. There's this whole closed loop system you can do with a podcast just for your business alone. If you had literally $0, you have a perfect medium there to go out and get new business.
Yeah. I mean, like I was in a room of 850 agency owners in New York City right before COVID, or maybe this time last year. I can't remember. Time just flies by, right?
It's weird. This year has been like 10 years rolled into one.
Yeah. And I look at agency owners as leading people, right? Like innovators, right? Like early adopters. And I go, how many people have podcasts? And it was like 10 out of 850. And I'm like, think of the opportunity. Like, really, like the podcast, the cool thing about podcasting is people, it's not like a video. Like when I look at the stats on the video, I'll be like, all right, I'll be happy if people watch 30% of the video. But on a podcast, they'll listen to almost 99% all the way through. And it's because of this, like you can multitask. Like we're all busy, we're all driving, so we need to listen to something. We're all commuting, we need to listen to something. We're at our kids' sporting events, we need to listen to something so we don't have to talk to those annoying parents next to us, right? So, you're
the guy sitting there with your headphones, not looking in either direction, just so no one talks to you.
I'm like, just because you're a parent doesn't mean like, we need to be best friends. Just right, like I'm an introvert.
Introverted extrovert. I've seen you on stage, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
get after it.
But you're my people, so like I connect to those types of people. Like, but neighbors are like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "You," and I explain it. And they're like, "I don't know what is that." I just be like, "I'm a drug dealer." Let's just do that.
That's good. I'm going to start using that. Thanks for the advice, Swenk.
Awesome.
So before we wrap up here, one thing that really caught my attention is this, because we live in this big hustle culture. You see it from a lot of the big names out there. And your premise is how to scale faster without working as much, working as hard. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? How could that apply to a CEO listening to this, or even people within a department, entrepreneurship, so to say? How do you scale that baby without having to work as damn hard?
Well, it's not about working all the time, right? Like I feel that people get burned out. You remember when I, told you the story where I wanted to quit? Like I was working all the time and I just couldn't get away. And I was like this prisoner of this role that I actually had. And, it's just, and it's not the 4-hour work week. Like that's like bullshit, even though it's a good concept. Right. And obviously he's very, very smart and does really, really well. So not knocking that at all. But, it's all about just everybody treats. Here's an example. Everybody wants to climb a mountain or some type of mountain. And they try to rush up it as quick as they possibly can. And then when they get on the mountain, it's a good view. But we had our digital agency experience last week, and I'm always usually the last one to make sure everybody makes it up, because it's always fun, people climbing the mountain that are not used to the elevation, and they just like literally lay on the ground. And so I was going with a couple people that were a little bit slower than everybody, but I was able to enjoy the journey and be able to see the things that I would not necessarily have seen rushing up the mountain. And then even when you get to the top, which, like let's say in the business world, when I sold the agency, a lot of people would think that's the top. Well, it's lonely as hell. And then you're like, it's, what are we going to do? And I just wanted to, bring other people along with the ride and enjoy the journey. So it's not, you don't have to work all the time. You can have fun and take a little bit longer to get there, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I think people, I know whenever I try to work harder, I get less done. It's like when you really are able to remove yourself, take a step back. Because I'm a younger entrepreneur, and you see all the names out there like work your ass off, work your face off. If you're going to bed at 8 o'clock, or, if you're not going to bed till midnight or whatever, you just don't care enough. Right. And then it's like, yeah, the burnout is real. You could be super passionate, but that burnout happens for certain. Yeah. So,
I think it's just, if you enjoy the journey and you look at putting in the right systems, like the people that work all the time, they haven't created the right systems around them. And I'm eliminating some people, right? Like Gary Vaynerchuk has amazing systems around it. He's just so passionate. And I think he gets so much self-worth. And this is how I look at it from the outside. Like he gets so much self-worth from the recognition that he gets of being significant to so many people, that it's like it's a drug, and he's addicted to it. So he works all the time, but not all of us are like that. And so, especially if you want to build a business that you have the option to sell it one day, it can't be just centered around you, right? You have to create the right systems where you can actually transform yourself from the owner to a CEO. And I looked at it as kind of like creating 5 roles. Like there's really kind of 5 roles, right? So after I figured out what I wanted to do, I was like, all right, how do I come up with a vision and communicate that to my team often? Okay. Because then I'm giving the power to my team to make a decision for what's better for the company rather than what's better for for themselves, right? So I gave them the vision and I'm communicating it often. The second is I have to coach and mentor my leadership team, only them. I can't have everyone reporting to me, right? Like that's just overwhelming, and you'll have a life. And that's like, you should enjoy it now, right? Like the third is you should assist sales. Fourth is know the financials. And the last is be the face of the organization, or that division that you're actually running, because you have to position yourself as a trusted advisor. So in order to do that, you have to be the face. And then a lot of people might say, well, if you're the face, you'll have to work all the time. Or people always want to come to you for the problem. And then I go back to the perfect example is Gary Vaynerchuk. Like he's not servicing clients. Come on, like really? Like you think you probably wouldn't want him to service clients.
Or probably even selling all of the clients too, right? That gets handed over to a sales team.
But sometimes he'll assist some of the bigger accounts, which is perfectly fine. But right? So he could take a ton of time off if he wants, but it's his personal choice. I wish he sometimes talked more about that, because especially with some of the younger generation, they just work their ass off. And let's say, you get hit by a truck tomorrow. Like what regrets would you have? You didn't stop and look at the journey ahead, or, the current journey that you're on and enjoying it. Like when I look at everything that I did, I don't have any regrets. Like I took a lot of time to have fun and build it. And I still got to the place.
You said now you don't even work during the summers. Like,
yeah, I take off all summer.
That's insane. That's insane, but so awesome. I mean, that's so many people don't get that opportunity. Do you do like meditation or mindfulness or anything along those lines at all?
No. I mean, what I do is like I hike mountains or mountain bike or go on the boat, or my thing where I can come back and be really refreshed is like I like adventure or going places that no one else has gone, like climbing. And like last week, I took 20 agency owners up to these mountains that are 13,000 feet, where they have all these abandoned ghost towns and mining towns. And we literally found an old gold mine, and there was a gate and it was open. And I was like, all right, come on, guys, let's go in. You signed the waiver, right? Okay. Let's go in.
Jason and company disappear in the Colorado mountains.
Yeah, just completely. Yeah, we don't know where he went.
Yeah. In a gold mine. We'll find you in the gold mine.
In a gold mine. Well, at least we got money. But that's another
You're rich.
thing, right?
You're rich.
We're rich, but we can't use it because we're stuck.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of business owners are.
But maybe ghost currency exists. This might be a thing. There might be a ghost currency on the other side. So you might be doing pretty well there.
Maybe.
Who else, like, who are you really studying right now? If at all, book wise or thought leader wise, is there anyone that you're really receiving mentorship from at this point?
Well, I mean, I have a lot of friends that, I'll chat with about what they're doing, from like, Jeff Walker. I love what he's doing. He's out in Durango with me, and we'll chat. Jay Barra had speak at our event. All his books are amazing. Like, everybody go check out Talk Trigger and Utility and Hug Your Haters, like all amazing, content. So, and then Seth Godin, I'm not friends with him, but I know him and I've had him on the show. Really amazing people. That's
awesome. All right, man. Well, anything else super top of mind or you think would be actionable, valuable takeaway as we're wrapping up here?
The biggest thing is be consistent, be patient, and swank it.
Swank it.
And that's our URL. If you want to go to swank.it, we do own that URL.
Just swank it up, baby. That's pretty good. Well, cool, man. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this. And what's also the best way people to find you, follow you, get into contact with you right now?
Go to jasonswenk.com or go to swank, SWENK.it, and then we'll take you to the same place and go check it. I mean, we give all our stuff away for free, in bits and pieces, and then go check that out.
Cool, man. Really appreciate it. Stick around here just for 1 second. And those of you that are still listening, make sure you subscribe, leave a 5-star review so others can find the show too. And we will see you over on the next one.
Yeah.